Wonderful. So our Havdalah ritual, as you know, we have those spices to revive our souls and the presence of light to sustain us, the manifold light, the multi-wicked candle, to remind us that there's light in the week. And moreover, there's one more little piece. In Hebrew, I learned this recently also from Reb Sarah. In Hebrew, the way you say the days of the week, you say Sunday, for instance, is Yom Rishon Ba-Shabbat. Sunday is the first day within Shabbat. Right? Or Shel Shabbat. So every single day of the week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, also is made of Shabbat, has a little piece of Shabbat in it. And Shabbat is where we get to gather all those sparks together. And next Shabbos will be going directly into Purim. So the light is just going to gather and gather and gather and gather and gather from here throughout this weekend to Purim. So we'll start our Havdalah service with this wonderful line, Ozi. Leave a little light for the moment so that we can see these words. Ozi, v'zimrat yah, v'yihili Yeshua. God is my strength and my song. Before we sing, Reb Ruth would like to say a word.
I was just thinking that what you just said is exactly related to yesterday when you were talking about our need to prepare for Shabbat. So every day of the week we're already looking forward to the next Shabbat. So that expression, the first day of the week toward Shabbat, is exactly the same thing.
Yes. And may we all have the merit to spend each day this week doing something, thinking something to prepare us for a great Shabbat next week.
So we have to start cleaning every day, is that what you're saying?
If you clean a little bit every day, it's definitely easier on Friday.
I'd rather put it off on the last day.
Well, it's also that you think about the next Shabbat because at Mincha, the teaching is the next parsha.
Right,
we start reading the next few weeks parsha on the afternoon of Shabbat.
Right, we're already preparing for next Shabbat. There's a seamless. So with this fearlessness that helps us to go forward into the new week and trust that even in the darkness we're just gathering more sparks. The second line down is bolded. Ozi zimrat ya Adonai v'yihili Yeshua. For Yah is my strength and melody and my source of help. I suspect people know the tune. It's easy.
Ozi zimrat Yah v'yihili Yeshua. Ozi zimrat Yah. Ozi Vezimrat Yah Vayahi Lishua.
Is there someone who would like to hold the candle? Good.
ושאבתם מים וששון ממעייני הישועה, לאדוני הישועה, על עמך ברכתך סלע. אדוני צבאות עמנו, משגב לנו, אלוהי יעקב סלע. אדוני צבאות אשרי אדם בוטח בך, אדוני יושיע המלך יעננו, ביום קוראנו. ליהודים הייתה אורה, הייתה אורה, ושמחה וששון ויקר. It's the penultimate line before the brachot. ליהודים הייתה אורה, הייתה אורה, ושמחה וששון ויקר. It's from the book of Esther. We'll try it again just to lie. As we put out our candle, we're not completely in the darkness because this is the time we welcome Elijah, the prophet, the bringer of the Messianic age.
A week of peace, may gladness reign and joy increase. A good week, a week of peace, may gladness reign and joy increase.
Mashiach,
Happy New Week! Shabbat Tov!
If anybody wants them, you can pass them. I mean, they're there.
We have cups of grape juice and Kiddush wine if anyone would like. We'll pass them around. And we also have about a half hour now for people to have question and answers, a discussion. People want to share insights or thoughts from the teaching, that's also most welcome. But if people had questions that they wanted to put to me publicly, then this is your moment. Don't let me bust the party. I don't want to bust the party, but it's 8:30 already. Hi.
I have a question about the church. At one point you said that most of the universe and most of God remains hidden from us by necessity. Can you explain what you mean by necessity? As opposed to, it's just the way it is, which you also said.
As opposed to it's just the way it is. I think just as it's the nature of our consciousness. The nature of our consciousness is limited in that way. We can understand. We just can't understand. I mean, God is ineffable and unknowable and infinite. Our minds can't grasp a concept like infinite. I mean, we could think about the concept of infinite, but by necessity, it's infinite. It's ultimate. It's everything. The human mind can't expand that far, I think.
I mean, I can buy that's just the way it is. But
of necessity.
But why is it by necessity? Why did it have to be that way?
So you could say there could be a universe where everything and everyone is in constant conscious awareness of everything else, or of the true nature of a single unitive reality. You could say that's possible, and for some people that's the vision of messianic consciousness. You know, that's the end of days in the Jewish tradition, where we do recognize that it's all one. And interestingly, Purim is the one holiday which is said to remain after that. Now, all the other holidays will fall away because we won't need them anymore, because we'll be in a unitive consciousness, but because Purim is precisely the celebration of the masked nature of a unitive reality, that's what we will still celebrate in the time to come. So, yeah, I don't know if it has to be that way. Maybe all I mean is that's the way it is right here, right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
This is kind of the same subject. This morning you mentioned, before we said Shema, that it's in Berea that we have the hardest time meeting oneness, or because, and you didn't say because, but I was curious about that. There's the statement that the Megillah Mezrich says about one must reduce oneself to nothingness and then ascend to Berea as a process. But I wondered if you could talk about oneness in that, in the sense of the way it is and the way it's not, for the way to get to our ascending to the world of thought.
Oh, the world of thought. To be entirely honest, it was something that came out of my mouth that I hadn't given a whole lot of thought to it before I said it this morning. I think what I meant is that the mind, the discursive mind, is apt to sort of make distinctions between things, to discern difference, and to name and to categorize, and to say this is not that, this is this is that. And so, perhaps on second thoughts, it's not fair to say Bria is the world which is the most separated, and I would have to think about that some more. It was simply a reflection on that quality of the mind, that it has that tendency to want to categorize and to separate things and to see them as disparate and to point out the differences between them. Yeah, does that answer your question?
It sounds like, and then the Shema is the way of going into that oneness through
Right, it's interesting that in this four worlds model of davening, the place where the Shema comes is Davka in that world of Bria and differentiation. That's where we need the thought, we need to have this mantra, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Whatever it looks like, it is actually all one. As Reb Sarah says, it's either a non-dual or it isn't, folks. Like, non-dual even when it looks non-dual. Rob, and then Ziva.
I'm going to switch gears a bit, if it's okay with you.
Please.
I guess it was last night you mentioned that you took quite a journey from your Orthodox upbringing to where you are now. Would you be interested in sharing with us something about that?
I guess the first thing to say is I grew up in a modern Orthodox environment, but not at all an intolerant or closed-minded environment. And I had a strong secular education, and modern Orthodoxy in the UK, as in other parts of the Commonwealth, is much more the sort of broad church default. There's a lot of non-practicing Jews who define as Orthodox. So it doesn't have quite the same connotation, I think, as Orthodoxy in this country, where it's more of an active choice to be Orthodox. That said, I did grow up in an observant household. And I guess I've probably always been a seeker and a free thinker. But it wasn't until my early 20s that I started to explore other forms of Judaism. In the environment that I grew up, Reform was this sort of great other, and I once set foot in a non-Orthodox synagogue for a friend's bar mitzvah, and that was it. Like, I had no contact with it whatsoever. I went through my entire university career never going to the liberal minyan, ever, even though I was kind of frustrated, behind the mechitza at the Orthodox. I still just went to the Orthodox because I thought that, that was the way to be authentically and deeply Jewish. And that was always something I was interested in. Even at my most frustrated, I never actually really left it. I was just feeling more unfulfilled by it. And then when I was about 23, having finished university, 22, 23, having finished university, I met someone who, for the first time in my life, I met someone who had an independent spiritual, or became friends with someone who had an independent spiritual practice. Some of which was davening, like he was trying to daven on his own, but he was also meditating, and he was also journaling, and he was going through the course written up in the book, The Artist's Way. And so there was something that really attracted me about that, and I started doing the art. Well, first I started journaling, and then a little while later I actually started doing the Artist's Way. And this took me on this sort of spiritual journey, which led me then to decide that I wanted to go and spend some time living in a spiritual community. And initially I thought that I might go back to India, where I travelled in my gap year between school and university. And then I was thinking, well, maybe there's some kind of Jewish ashram place. Maybe in America. It's probably the kind of thing they have over there in America. So I asked my friend, the initial spiritual practitioner inspiration, and he said, oh yes, we must ask Jay Michelson. Right. Jay Michelson will know. Jay Michelson is a sort of mover and shaker in the Jewish scene. He's done lots of interesting things. Joel had met Jay a couple of years prior to that at Burning Man, the Burning Man Festival. All this chain of connection and synchronicity just kept on. So we called up Jay, and Jay said, "Yeah, yes, absolutely, you must move to Elat Chaim. They have a full-time residential community of young people called the Neshama community. That's where you should go." So I did. And I'd never heard of Elat Chaim before, I'd never heard of Jewish Renewal, I'd never heard of Reb Zalman, but I was like, okay, that's great, I'll go, and if I don't like it, I'll leave. So I went, and I was pretty clear within 24 hours that I liked it, and was going to stay, and I ended up staying there for a year. And living in this very, very deep, very wonderful, emotionally centered, spiritually centered Jewish Renewal retreat center, where I both had the privilege and benefit of living in this incredible community, intentional community of about 10 or a dozen young people, and also just receiving the whole circuit of amazing Jewish renewal teachers and rabbis as they came through, and learning so much from them. And that was really sort of a conversion experience, if you will. It was at that point in my life that I realized, for the first time, literally, oh, you don't have to be Orthodox to be authentically Jewish and to have a deep Jewish life and deep Jewish practice. In fact, this seems to me, in many ways, more authentic and deeper and more fulfilling. And it was during that time, it was the last night of a meditation retreat, my first 7-day meditation retreat, where I ended up having a conversation with the teacher and sharing my ideas about how they could be doing davening better. And he said, oh yes, of course, you must have considered becoming a rabbi. In this generation, you know, it's really a woman's game. And like, I think he may have been a little naive about that, but only in certain quarters is that true. But my mind was in this very, like, you know, if anyone sat a meditation retreat before, you know, you get kind of sensitive and like open to things. And literally in that moment, my mind just went, oh yeah, I hadn't considered becoming a rabbi, but now you mention it, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And then from there, it was kind of a hop, skip, and a jump, you know. That was really the sort of reorientation. Once I sort of surrendered my attachment to Orthodoxy, it became clear that, like, yeah, obviously that would be a sensible path for me. And, you know, since then, not going to go blow by blow through my whole life, but I went back to England for a year, and then I went to Boston. I studied at Hebrew College, which is a trans-denominational rabbinical school, founded by Rabbi Arthur Green, whom I believe came here and did a Shabbaton not so long ago. It's a very wonderful program, very wonderful place. Elisa Berger, is also of this community, is now studying there, and Yotam Schachter, and maybe others.
Haley Goldstein from the Nazareth just got accepted last week.
Oh, Mazel Tov. It's a wonderful, wonderful place, and it kind of has a kinship with Jewish renewal and sort of neo-Hasidic flavor to it, and yeah, and life, and there's more, obviously, but and through I'll go just briefly, like many Jewish renewal people, sort of learning something about Buddhism and having, you know, meditation practice, things like kirtan. And in general, I'm quite spiritually open. There's not much that I'm not, you know. I've prayed with Muslims, I've prayed with Christians, I've prayed with Sikhs. I'm happy to pray in all sorts of flavors. If it works, it works. So to my mind, it's many paths to one source.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Ziva, and somebody else was waving their hands.
I was referring to the thing of Shema and Bria. Because in the 4 worlds, Bria is the first world that has separation in it. Atzilut doesn't have any. And I never made the connection, but it makes a lot of sense that when you reach the level of Bria, where it's the end of separation, you call the Shema, you are preparing to move back up into the oneness.
Wow, and you can still hear the echo of the oneness, because you've just left the oneness. You can still... Nice. Did Willa, did you? No. Did somebody over? Or somebody else? Yeah. I don't know your name, sorry. Steve, hi.
Could you say what you think there is about you that you could bring to our community that nobody else in the world can? Whoa.
Well, nobody else is
literally
unique.
figuratively.
Every person will bring something unique. Every person is unique.
I know, but could you articulate it?
Well, I mean, I've got great hair. Which I can also kind of make into a beard. I can play the recorder. I'm pretty badass at the recorder. I don't know.
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Although you just did.
You know, I've got got a lovely English accent too. I'm not saying no one else in the world has that, obviously, most English people. Some English people anyway. I've got the self-deprecating humour. I mean, I think the purpose of the Shabbaton is for you to be able to judge for yourself, to see what it is that I bring in terms of skills, in terms of energy. Like, who am I? What is it? And is this something you want? Is this going to be a good fit? I don't know if I can reify it. I think it's open to your perceptions.
I think speaking to the other side of that coin, though, why does our community? What's the meaning of our community for you?
The first thing I heard about your community that really made me think, ooh, is that you had great davening. That you had, say, those people, they want to pray, they want to sing, they want to get high, they want to meditate. They like.
This is Colorado.
Yeah, right. Yes. And that the people here, that many people here have a very serious and deep spiritual life. And that's definitely something. That was sort of the initial, right, that could be somewhere that I would want to be. Since I've learned more about the community and about Boulder, I have to say one thing that I find very attractive is the amount of sort of cross-pollination and collaboration in the Jewish community here. That it seems like exactly that sort of fertile chaos right now. That a lot of the structures have fallen away. There's the flood, and every rabbi in town except Rabbi Mark is leaving or moving. It's a place in flux, but that already has like this great chaver of rabbis. Zalman's here, obviously. That's also obviously a draw. But there's great potential for collaboration and really interesting things, that people are already working together in really interesting ways and wanting to try new things and wanting to try new growth. So that's part of it. And then I have to say, coming here this weekend, just meeting so many wonderful people and feeling so welcomed, and just the number of people who've come up to me and shared something so like powerful about their experience. It kind of blows me away. Just, it makes me feel like this could be an exciting connection.
And we now have Trader Joe's too.
Yeah, I had to go all the way to West London to get to Trader Joe's. Yeah, Rachel, and then Andrea, and then.
One of the things that I've had conversations with several people about is making yet another transition from having been a community that, although we have a quarter-time interim rabbi, we've learned to do a lot of things on our own. And we have a number of people who've been fulfilling roles, in my view, really well. Charna teaching Torah, Reb Patrice as our spiritual counselor. And so, and I have felt, and I've heard from some other people, a little bit of concern about what happens to that, because we are a different community than we were before Reb Tirza left us as spiritual leader. So can you speak to that about, so then there's going to be another transition to having someone in a central position?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, in an ideal world, I would love to see as many people as possible fulfilling major roles as teachers and spiritual functionaries as possible, and carrying large pieces. The rabbi role is not going to run out of things to do. So on a pragmatic level, it's great if other people can carry pieces responsibly and well. It's great in terms of people's own actualization and fulfillment. I don't think it's a healthy community where people are in the position of much as receiving as active, as being the recipients of whatever that's all coming from one place. I don't think that's healthy. I think it should be absolutely a collaborative effort with people stepping up and developing their skills and stepping into leadership and having many points like that. I recognize there's also the issue of funding. If you're going to try and pay a rabbi can you continue to pay the chaplain and the mitzvah coordinator and whatever other positions are currently drawing a salary? How is that going to work? How is that accommodation? That obviously needs to be talked about. And there also, I think, needs to be a process of evaluation from the community at large. What of these things is working really well? What of these things could be working well with a little bit of adjustment? What of these things the individual may feel great about their role, but the community may not feel great about their role? That I think we have to enter a very conscious process of evaluation and conversation about how to go forward. I certainly wouldn't see it being to anybody's benefit for a rabbi to come in here and say, all right, all your positions are axed, I'm it now, everybody else go back to what they were doing. That, I don't think that would make sense for anybody. Andrea?
The question I want to ask is a personal question. It's worried me about Jewish renewal, and I want to ask it without being sensational. We're an ecstatic tradition. There's great honor given to people who have brought people in, who have been musically gifted. But there's also, I think, less exposed than for the Catholics. There has been a tradition of some rabbinic abuse. Do you think that this has been adequately looked at and learned from, in the sense that even if it's larger among some people who have been our leaders and our causers of harm, it's also in all of us? Have you had any thoughts about that whole area?
It's very interesting. I mean, it is sort of commonly thought to be a sort of shadow of charismatic leadership. I wonder if it's, I know this isn't exactly what you're asking, I wonder if it's been as consciously addressed where it comes to female charismatics, and you know, that there are some differences. I think clearly you feel that it needs to be more explicitly addressed and brought into the light, and it's one of those things that often gets sort of hidden in these webs of shame and secrecy. And I hear what you're saying about it going into being carried by all the members who affiliate with that ecstatic tradition and feel identified with that. It isn't something that I've given a whole lot of thought to myself. I haven't worked in other than L'Chaim and Isabel Friedman, I've not been, I haven't worked in a renewal congregation as yet, and I'd be happy to talk more about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a question about, so Tikkun Olam, politics, the Bima, justice, all of these things form this constellation that can go in all kinds of different directions. What do you think about that? Where do you...
Are you asking, is there a place for politics on the Bima?
Not explicitly. I'm sort of curious how you look at all of those things in a context and balance them. And that's one of the pieces of it, but it's not all the pieces of it.
I think it's a great question. It's a great question, and I think it also speaks to that balance of, as the rabbi, how much right or responsibility does the rabbi have to lead the charge or set the agenda for a given community, and how much is the rabbi there in service to the community, responsive to where the community sets its agenda, which is one of those sort of enduring questions and tensions in the rabbinate. Personally, I do feel that there is place for politics on the Bima, and that has to be the discretion of the rabbi's conscience. And if there's a distinct disunity, if the rabbi and the congregation, although congregations are never in one place politically, there's always a spectrum and a spread, but if it's broadly a bad fit politically, it's not going to be a good fit in other ways, presumably. I think the rabbi does have a responsibility as a spiritual leader to be tuned into issues of justice in the world at large, and that congregations which only seek to serve their members' emotional and spiritual and material needs run the risk of becoming a little bit, self-centered, a little bit navel-gazing, self-satisfied, and that it does communities good, as well as doing the world good, obviously, to have an outward focus as well, and to engage in the wider world, and that keeps the energy flowing and keeps things fresh. And if we really think that we're here to make a difference, and our spiritual lives are not just for their own sake; they're also to bring us into alignment, so that we can receive guidance and energy and inspiration, enthusiasm for action, for making the world that we want to live in. David, and then I forget your name, sorry. Doris. And yeah.
So, it is a sad fact of life that community, is also a financial institution, that things have to be paid for. And I'm curious if you could address how spirituality and a need for bringing money into the community and sustainability, how do they work together? Because you mention money and people go, well, no, that's not spiritual, and it isn't, and yet it has to be.
I actually think that money is very spiritual, and I think that it's part of a non-dual consciousness. It's also part of, I was having a conversation earlier today at lunch about the reintegration of the feminine and the material as a whole, rather than being exiled as, this is other, this is not good, the body is wrong, spirit is right, the body, the spirituality of money and of abundance and flow, it's a cosmic energy. It is absolutely something which is, especially in our time and place, money is one of the most powerful energies, which not always being used to the good, but it's definitely a way that things are in relationship to one another and shift. I think it's very important not to be afraid of money. I think it's very important not to be afraid of asking for money. I think it's one thing I've learned from my current experience in a congregation is that congregations are financially sustainable, not necessarily in an egalitarian sort of poll tax kind of way. Yes, there's dues paying membership, but what makes congregations financially sustainable is actually larger gifts from fewer people who have the ability and the desire to invest in the community and to support its well-being. And I think it's important to recognise that I think it's also important for people to invest household by household as they're able to, put their money where their mouth is. I think it's also important to remember that the budget is never going to be, unless you live in an incredibly affluent community, you need to ask people for money. And you need to reach out to the people who have that ability.
Speaking of, they haven't said it for Shalach Manas.
Doris.
Speaking back to the discussion on collaboration, between last night and tonight, it's become apparent to me, and I'm sure to others, that music and song is very powerful for you and really moves you. And we have Michelle, has been part of our congregation and our Hassan, and has been such a vital, wonderful part of leadership when we were just kind of holding it as community without Reb Tirsa's leadership. I just wondered, how does that work for you when you know that there's such a strong presence of a cantor here, of someone who brings so much music?
Am I correct that Michelle's not here this weekend?
She was there last night. She was there last night.
Oh, I didn't see. Does anyone know where she was sitting?
Yeah, right here.
Oh, okay.
Tall, thin, beautiful.
I wish I'd met her this weekend, or I would love to still meet her this weekend if that could be arranged. I think that's great. Fundamentally, collaboration always works better when it's a compatible set of people. That's just a pragmatic reality.
How attached you are to bringing your love, the music you love, and having that present in services and celebrations. I'm sure.
I have to admit, I'm pretty attached to having the opportunity to make music. That definitely is something that I want to do, and I also don't want to do it at the exclusion of anybody. And you know, harmony is one of those great things. I would be delighted to have more people to sing with. I don't have to be, you know, singing every time. I don't have to be leading services every time. It's, again, wonderful to have a broad array of leaders who can hold space. And I'd love to meet Michelle, if possible, while I'm here. Jonathan.
It's not a question. It's
At least you know that. That's so good.
it's an observation. I've been in this community for a long time, and I was here last night, this morning, at lunch, and this evening. And I don't know if this is really the venue to say this, but I want to say that I've been totally enjoyed your willingness to be present, to be open, to be honest, and to be direct, and to share with us in a way that, for me, was really touching and beautiful. And I just wanted to say thank you very much, because I know how hard, I can only imagine, I don't know for sure, I can imagine the difficulty that one faces when they come into an environment like this, and you're exposed to all these faces, and though they are loving and they are sweet, but people are critical, and you know, yeah. So I just want to say bless you and thank you. I have totally enjoyed this experience with you. I didn't say I was done yet. No, thank you very much.
And, you know, I'm actually just looking at the time. It is 9:05, and you've had a long weekend, and you still have more tomorrow. So
thank you.
Maybe one or two more questions, and maybe we can wrap up there.
I'd like to call on people who haven't asked something yet. So,
Steve in the back.
No, I know Steve. I also have a
Starts
G.
with a C.
Kathy.
So, as a rabbi in the Boulder community, I'm curious how...
Are you a rabbi?
No, as you. As you. I'm not rabbi.
Nor do you play one on TV.
Everyone here knows that.
It's possible. I know you work with Jewish family services.
No, and being, you know, if you were our rabbi, the face of Neve Kodesh, how do you see your reach into the community, your participation in the community?
The broader Jewish community,
right.
The broader Boulder community?
Boulder Jewish community.
Oh, Boulder Jewish community. Well, like I said before, I'm super excited about all the collaboration between synagogues. I'm interested, I think the Chavurah model is so interesting and so exciting, and that's another thing that definitely attracts me to this community. Something I was speaking with some other people about is reaching beyond the congregational world and being, you know, particularly if the goal is to connect with more Jews in their 20s and 30s around Judaism, then actually taking it out of the synagogue is kedai, it's appropriate. So I know that there's a couple of friends of mine are actually just moving here and getting involved in not just the CSA that's already running, but starting Jewish co-housing and intentional community and farm work. And that's something that I think would be a very interesting place to connect. I know there is a Moshe House, which is another organization particularly aimed at younger Jews in Denver. I don't think there is one yet in Boulder. That's something that might happen. I don't know Boulder very well yet. I don't know what its institutions are. I also think Naropa and the university are such interesting fertile grounds that there must be so many Jews there, whether or not they're identified with Great. And I have sort of shared territory with Jews. I'm sure that there are Jews out there that would love to find some inspiring Jewish teaching to add to their spiritual palette as well. So I think Boulder's a very exciting place because of that. And the JCC, I mean, I understand the JCC and JT Boulder, there's a lot that's already happening in the rebuilding after the flood, and as things sort of shift around, there's a lot of potential, I think. Yes, Steve.
So I'm wondering about, what are your goals? What is the future vision that you're holding for yourself? I'm wondering if you have any, I don't know what the right words are, but legal restrictions. I mean, you're not here. Is there any limitation to how long you work here and so forth? So, what is the
It's a great question. Thank you. In terms of my personal vision and my career, I'm not entirely sure. To be honest, I think the next step, it would make sense to be a congregational rabbi. Particularly, I'm particularly wanting to develop and hone my musicianship and service leadership on a personal level. That's something that I want to, get really good at. I really like the combination, the palette that you get as a congregational rabbi, that you get to teach and lead services and be intimately connected with people in their day-to-day lives and in their life cycle transitions and rituals, working with people. One thing that I've really, really enjoyed about the congregation where I'm currently serving is just that, the real cradle-to-grave experience that there aren't many places in life where you really get to interact with, in the same day, regularly, with a 7-year-old and a 70-year-old. And I really like that. To keep learning, to keep teaching. I just think, and whatever I want to do in 10 or 20 years in my career, I think that being a congregational rabbi for a good chunk of time will consolidate what I can give in a lot of important ways. It's not an easy job. You have to balance a lot of different things, but I think there's tremendous potential for growth, for personal growth in the role. I might end up wanting to save the world more actively. I wouldn't be surprised if I ended up sort of trying to work for some kind of global parliament or something like that, or like moving to the Middle East to do hands-on peace work or something. I do have a desire to save the world, so it wouldn't surprise me if I don't stay in the congregation. Maybe we'll save the world. So I do think there's politics in there.
Are there any limitations?
To answer your question, the congregation would have to sponsor me to receive what's called an R1, a religious workers visa. My understanding is that the congregation's in good standing as a 501c3 and so forth, and I'm a legit rabbi, which I am. That it's not a lottery per se. It's unlikely to be denied, although I guess there is the possibility. But it's not like getting a regular American work visa where there aren't enough to go around. This is a particular category of work visa, a religious workers visa, and it's tied to the job. So I have one currently, but it's limited to my current place of employment, so it doesn't travel with me. So at such time as if the congregation were to offer me the position, the congregation would need to employ a lawyer and start the process of applying for a religious workers visa for me. And I should also advise you that that process takes a number of months. It takes sort of 3 to 6 months for that to come through, and it's not exorbitantly expensive. It's sort of $5,000 or $6,000, I think, in terms of legal fees and application fees, but there is money attached. Thank you for asking. I think that's a good question. The one I have right now is foreshortened because my passport was expiring. I don't actually know if there's a limit to how long they're usually good for. Maybe Rabbi Mark would know.
Is that what he's on?
I think now he has a green card. I'm pretty sure that now he has a green card, but yeah, we should find out. I don't know if there's a limit, if it lasts the length of your contract or.
And my experience is that it can be renewed. Like
Renewed.
once you've got it, it's actually really easy to renew.
And typically, it's also dependent how long it takes based on where you live and the number of applications in that area. And Colorado is, the number of applications in Colorado are a lot lower than other areas in the country. And typically, if you have a valid passport, then it will be tied to the length of your employment.
Okay.
It's typically how that works.
And would you be, so if you were offered the position,